Okay, I might be stupid, but I'm a tenacious bastard. Right, so I'm back at my car here, guys. The SX4, of course. The previous video showed you what the issue was with the air conditioning. It's kind of got me puzzled. Fortunately, a few of the fellas have made some good suggestions in the comment section on the previous video. One of them being, is it possible that this is actually under-serviced with respect to the amount of refrigerant in the system, which would mean it has a leak. Now, a wee bit of history to this that I don't know if I mentioned it in the previous video or not. I lost cooling gradually on the car. It took about 2 weeks to go from when it was working near optimal to when I lost cooling completely. That does sound like a leak, I must admit, although I did leak check it. If you guys recall, I didn't have my nitrogen regulator at the time. I didn't have the fitting actually at the time, so I had to just use my argon regulator, and it was only leak checked to about 70 pounds. So that's not really high enough for a legitimate leak check. So if it is leaking, I suppose that's a good thing, because it's probably the easiest fix, barring the possibility it's actually leaking at the evaporator core, of course, which might be a big problem. But first things first, an easy thing to do is actually just bottle feed in a wee bit more refrigerant and see how the system reacts. If it does look like it's going towards normality, then it is likely a leak. Okay, so the car is running, guys. The compressor is engaged. We're back to the same scenario. 20 pounds on the low side and about 80 pounds on the high side. Obviously too low and too low. And I'm here by myself today, but if we could flip the throttle, bring the RPM up, this would actually drop to 0, as you've seen in the previous video, as I mentioned. So let's just, on the low side here, we'll add just a little bit of refrigerant. All the lines are actually previously purged, guys. You've seen me do that before. That pressure is claiming. The high side pressure is claiming. Because of course I have no facility to evacuate the system and measure how much is removed, guys. I have no sense of how much has actually been lost, if it is in fact leaking. But we definitely have an increase in the high side. Can I put the gauges against the windshield so I can see that when I flip the throttle on the inside? Maybe. Let me see. Well, I didn't expect to get this lucky, guys, but that's condensing water, and it's quite cool. So I think the system must be cooling. Let's go on the inside and see what the story is here. Yeah, there's some degree of cooling. Focus, focus, focus. There you go. 18 degrees. Let's just lift the RPM. Not sure if you guys can see the gauges too well there. Got about 180 pounds on the high side and just about 45 pounds on the low side there. Heading towards 50, pretty reasonable numbers. 2000 RPM. definitely cooling again. Much to my surprise, I was quite sure there would have been a restriction, but thanks to Iain at Automotive Solutions, he suggested that it looked like to him that it would just be extremely low on charge. You'll notice, guys, the car's been running for some time now, and the condenser, or sorry, the compressor isn't making that weird clicking noise. I had mentioned earlier that the compressor, or perhaps I didn't mention, that the compressor was not making that noise until it had ran for some time, which is to me synonymous with an overheat scenario. Whether or not it was causing the clutch to slip, or the vanes inside the compressor proper were starting to clack on the housing, that was, anyway, something was thermally expanding and no happy, or not getting the lubrication it required. And again, with the refrigerant in the system circulating the oil, that doesn't seem to be the case. I'm sure I'll lose cooling again because there is a leak. I mean, that refrigerant clearly went somewhere. It didn't just vanish. I will take a close look at the evaporator drain. Sometimes the tracer dye can show up on the drain line as the condensate runs down the drain line. It can carry some of the tracer dye with it. I'll check that. There is the evaporator drain there, guys. And there is no fluorescence. I did not expect this. I just picked up a couple of cans here and I thought, well, I think I'm throwing my money away, but I guess don't jump to conclusions is the moral of the story here. So I'm actually very pleased with this. I must admit, perhaps it's salvageable, perhaps it is something simple. No guarantees. Again, it could be leaking from the evaporator, in which case it's a disaster basically, but perhaps it's just something simple. Right, that's it, boys. I'll leave it at that. Thanks again to Iain Automotive Solutions. Go check out his channel, boys, if you don't know it. Thanks again. Cheers.